On a late summer night in Beijing, the world lost a soft-voiced performer whose on-screen tenderness had won millions of hearts. But the public story that followed, the terse official line, the mother's sorrowful confirmation, the image wipes on the mainland internet, the sudden cremation, and the avalanche of rumors, has turned that grief into a broader national conversation about power, secrecy, and what happens when a celebrity's death collides with politics. 1. The official record, short, clean, and final. On September 11 to 12, 2025, Chinese actor Yu Menglong, also credited in English as Alan Yu, died after falling from a high-rise in Beijing. Authorities publicly described the event as an accidental fall and said there was no criminal suspicion. His mother later confirmed that he had been drinking and that the fall was accidental. The family and police asked for privacy as they processed the loss. Within days, the police announced they were investigating and, in statements reported by outlets, had arrested a small number of people for spreading false rumors about the case. Local authorities said their on-scene inspections and forensic examinations did not indicate criminality. At least one report said those who admitted to inventing or spreading false claims confessed and would face legal consequences. Those are the hard points that anchor the official version: tragic accident, no criminality established by police, family grief, and legal action against rumormongers. 2. The final text that reignited suspicion. A crucial piece of the public record that many commentators point to as a pivot from grief to suspicion is a final text message, an allegedly authentic message Yu sent to his mother shortly before his death. Multiple outlets published versions of that text, some quoting it verbatim. It reportedly referenced fear, mentioned dirty money, and warned that they may come and kill me anytime, or otherwise suggested he felt pressured or manipulated. Whether the wording is exact varies between outlets. What's consistent is that such a message circulated online and quickly inflamed public doubt. If the message is genuine, it dramatically complicates the drunk accident frame. A frightened final note implies someone felt threatened, which is why the message's authenticity and chain of custody have been such hotly contested points. 3. The internet cleanup, deletions, suspensions, and a growing backlash. One immediate, highly visible consequence of the case was mass deletion and suppression of posts across Chinese social media. Within days, platform moderation reports and independent trackers indicated that more than 100,000 posts mentioning Yu's death or certain rumors had been deleted and that thousands of accounts had been restricted or suspended. Comment functions on some hot threads were disabled. Hashtags were blocked or shadow banned. That heavy-handed sweep catalyzed suspicion rather than calming it. When thousands of grieving voices are silenced, many infer that someone in power is trying to contain an uncomfortable narrative. At the same time, the official message that the police had ruled out criminal elements and were acting against rumormongers, and that the family agreed, sits in direct tension with the visible pattern of content removal. That tension is exactly what analysts abroad and many netizens seized on. If there were nothing more to hide, why such swift and large-scale erasure? For the speed of closure, cremation, and the question of time. A second, recurring theme in the online debates is the timing of the body's handling. Multiple fan reports and independent observers flagged how quickly cremation was carried out, reportedly within a very short period after death. In high-profile or uncertain deaths, families and police typically allow time for independent forensic review and for relatives, fans, and media to process the event. In this case, critics argue, the rapid cremation removed the possibility of independent second opinions, leaving only the official forensic record. The official explanation invokes family wishes and customary grieving processes. For others, it looks like an irreversible sealing of evidence. See the earlier police statements and the mother's public appeal to end rumors. 5. The human voice. Yu's mother speaks, but some hear a script. The presence of Yu Menglong's mother in the public record is a key emotional element. She spoke publicly and urged fans to stop spreading speculation and let the family grieve, a plea that, on its face, is exactly what many bereaved relatives ask for. But social media users parsed her tone and phrasing closely. Some observers wondered whether she was under pressure or coaching when she made her statement. Others pointed out that elderly relatives often comply with authorities' wishes to avoid legal or personal blowback. To many, the mother's plea did not settle the questions. It sharpened them, because the optics of a grieving parent repeating an official line is a scenario that historically occurs when families are squeezed between private sorrow and public control. 6. Political overtones. Why citizens saw this as more than celebrity news. The public reaction in China was unusually intense because celebrity deaths do not happen in a political vacuum. Over the last decade, cases in which powerful interests, political pressure, or studio disputes intersected with personal tragedies have made many people skeptical of tidy official accounts. In Yu's case, a number of amplifying elements pushed the story into a political register. The alleged last text referencing dirty money and threats. The rapid cremation that foreclosed independent autopsy. The sweeping censorship of fan discussion, and the arrests of rumor spreaders, which were framed by authorities as law enforcement actions but read by others as narrative control. Foreign analyses of the public reaction framed the case as an instance where the Chinese public obsesses over a perceived cover-up, partly because of these patterns of control and partly because digital platforms make suppression visible. Observers abroad, including international political analysts, have connected the dots and posed hard questions about whether political or institutional pressures shaped how the aftermath was handled. That is the view captured in broader analysis pieces. 7. What fans found, preserved, and promoted citizen archiving as resistance. Once platform content was removed within the mainland ecosystem, dedicated fan groups and diaspora communities began archiving everything. Cached copies of now-deleted posts, screenshots of the mother's statement, copies of newly published articles, CCTV footage, when available, from surrounding areas, timestamps of Yu's last public appearances, and audio, video clips from live streams that predated his death. These fan-compiled dossiers are now the primary public record of much of the social discussion. Fan investigators built minute-by-minute timelines, cross-checked reported sighting times, and mapped witness claims. Some citizen researchers posted forensic image analyses, highlighting alleged bruises or cuts, or arguing about the position of a torn window screen, while repeatedly stressing that these materials were fragmentary and could not replace official evidence. The sheer volume of archival activity turned a grieving community into a quasi-investigative collective. These efforts are one reason the story has remained visible internationally. Reports about large petition numbers and the global reaction reference this movement. 8. The police narrative versus the public narrative, arresting rumor spreaders. Authorities took visible steps to criminalize what they labeled malicious rumor-mongering. Some accounts were suspended, and reports say several individuals were detained for fabricating claims relating to the death. The official message was straightforward. Rumors harm families and destabilize society, law enforcement will act. To authorities, those arrests were a mechanism of order. To many fans, the arrests looked like a blunt instrument to silence inconvenient questions, especially when the only public confirmations were an official forensic statement and the mother's remarks. This interplay, where truth-seeking citizens are met with both information suppression and legal sanctions, is what drove many international observers to describe the case as a test of the balance between state order and civic demands for transparency. 9. Theories, old patterns, and why political pressure is the whisper. Because the public record left gaps, the rumor mill produced a spectrum of theories. I will not present these as fact, but they illuminate why the narrative took a political hue. Financial/money trail. If the alleged final text about dirty money is genuine, it suggests you had been involved in or had knowledge of transactions he found morally or legally compromising, or that he was told money arriving to him was tainted. Fans speculated those transactions linked to powerful individuals or networks who would have a motive to silence exposure. This is where the final text reports figure heavily. Industry power struggles. Yu's career had ups and downs. In a cutthroat industry, being squeezed out of roles or contracts can invite pressure. Some sources mentioned last-minute role replacements and contractual fights, which, while common in entertainment, can also intersect with local power brokers and bigger interests. These are the sorts of industry conflicts many analysts believe could have escalated. See reporting that mentions his contract and role disputes in fan archives. Political/administrative pressure. Independent outlets and social commentators in the diaspora alleged that senior party officials might have requested restraint in public discussion, reports circulated online claiming verbal directives. These claims are extremely sensitive and, in most cases, cannot be independently verified through official channels. Still, if such verbal directives were made, they could explain why platforms and studios responded so quickly. Each of these theories points to a different form of hidden force, economic, industrial, or political, but all rest on the same public perception, that the way the aftermath was managed smelled of pressure. 10. Why so much erasure amplifies doubt? This case demonstrates a paradox of modern information control. Visible erasure often does more damage to institutional trust than candid disclosure. Mass deletions and account suspensions are themselves a signal about who has the power to define a story. When the signal is so visible, thousands of deleted posts, major hashtags blocked, it encourages the inference that someone with authority wanted a quick closure. That is why the political whisper, that the case was handled under pressure, gained legs. The pattern that caused distrust is not a single act but a concatenation, a disturbing final message, reported in multiple outlets, a fast cremation, mass deletions, arrests for rumors, and a mother's televised confirmation. When read together, the pieces feel like a curated, rapid tidy-up rather than the slow, transparent work of impartial inquiry. 11. International attention. How external coverage changed the stakes. Foreign media attention, from policy analysis outlets to regional entertainment desks, forced the story beyond state-curated boundaries. International attention did two things. First, it created diplomatic embarrassment for authorities who prefer such matters to remain domestic. Second, it amplified the voices of diaspora fans and foreign media, giving the case a global platform that mainland censors could not fully suppress. Foreign policy's coverage, among others, examined the structural reasons the public became convinced of a cover-up and how that reaction reflects broader anxieties in Chinese civil society about accountability. That analysis is one reason the case is no longer just about an actor's death. It has become a reference point in debates over transparency and state control. 12. What would a credible, transparent follow-up look like? If an impartial inquiry were possible, here are the kinds of actions that would most rapidly defuse conspiracy narratives. 1. Release, in full or redacted form, CCTV footage from the building entrance and common areas for the relevant hours, preserving privacy where necessary. 2. Publish a detailed forensic summary explaining the injuries and why they are, or are not, consistent with an accidental fall. 3. Document the chain of custody for the final text, how it was authenticated and its exact wording. 4. Explain the funeral and cremation timeline with notarized family statements to show consent was voluntary. 5. Allow independent oversight or an independent ombudsman, if possible, to review the major decisions around evidence disposal and public statements. At present, those steps have not occurred in ways that satisfy critics. The gap between a full, transparent process and the actual handling, which prioritized speed and cleanup, is the real engine of public distrust. 13. The human toll, grief transformed into activism. For many fans and colleagues, the problem isn't politics, it's the absence of a human, believable account for a life cut short. The outpouring of grief quickly became something else, not only memorials and candlelight vigils but also petitions, archived evidence, and lawyer-led efforts to push for clarity. Diaspora communities launched calls for independent reviews, academics and journalists raised questions in op-eds, and civic groups used the moment to reiterate calls for basic transparency standards in sensitive cases. This transformation from sorrow to civic activism is an important social ripple. 14. What we know and what we don't. What we know, reported by authorities and family Yu Menglong fell from a building. Police reported no criminal suspicion in their initial statements. The mother publicly confirmed the fall took place after drinking and asked for privacy. Authorities acted against people labeled as rumor spreaders. What remains unresolved or contested. authenticity and meaning of the final text message, detailed forensic findings and public explanation for the rapid cremation, the identities and statements of on-scene witnesses, the motives for rapid content suppression, and whether any pressure, political or otherwise, influenced the pace and content of the official record. Those unresolved items are the basis for the whispers about hidden forces. 15. Final reflections. Why this case resonates. Yu Menglong's death resonates not because of celebrity alone but because it illuminates the way modern China, and modern societies generally, manage information, power, and grief. The interplay of a frightened final message, swift procedural closure, massive content deletion, arrests for rumor spreading, and press commentary from abroad creates a pattern that looks, to many, like an attempt to keep something from being known. If there is a single lesson in this story, it is a modest one. In an information age, secrecy is rarely sustainable. Attempts to tidy complicated deaths into simple narratives will often backfire, especially when loved ones, digital archivists, and independent reporters insist on facts. The louder the silencing, the more determined many citizens become to keep asking questions.